My name is Joshua Coe, and I'm a pastor. That means that yesterday on Valentine's Day in Canada, I was immersed in preparations to conduct an evening's Ash Wednesday service. Interesting that these 2 days of remembrance collided this year. I'm a pastor. My job is to help my faith community actively and intentionally meet with the living God. I do my job by creating thoughtful and imaginative spaces for encounter. So it was while I was doing that work that my news feeds began to broadcast news coming out of Florida. High school shooting, several dead, refresh. 12 dead, refresh. 17 dead, scores of wounded. I remember the first memorable time news like this broke over the airwaves. I dropped everything I was doing and found myself in front of a TV for several hours. Columbine High School, 1999. That was almost 19 years ago. I remember the news of that school shooting took my breath away and sickened my stomach, leaving me full of grief and heartbroken. I was actively serving in my student ministry at my church in Chicago. I was still going regularly into my local high school to drop off and pick up students every day. And yes, back then, I even wore a long black trench coat. The news hit way too close to home. Yesterday, the news ran in the background on my computer as I typed and edited the final draft of the liturgy for that evening. I saw, I noticed, and I carried on. PowerPoints needed to be rechecked and microphones set up in the chapel. Since the beginning of 2018, there has been a shooting incident in an American school an average of every 60 hours. I'm an American. This is our new normal. And I'm growing numb to the stock aerial helicopter footage and zoom angle shots of flashing emergency vehicles and traumatized children huddled together with relieved parents. So I carried on, preparing and setting up until one photo made me stop. My colleague Larry messaged it to me. A woman standing without a child to hold, distraught, and on her forehead, the blackened ashes of palm leaves mixed with olive oil in the distinct clear shape of a cross. From dust you came, and to dust you shall return. This woman had begun her day attending an Ash Wednesday service, a service that reminds followers of Jesus that we are human, we are mortal, fragile, and easily broken. And all our striving, and all our saving, and all our achieving will one day abruptly end. The breath we take for granted, the breath that enlivens dust, is gift. Because from dust you came, and to dust you shall return. I stood up in front of my community on Wednesday night, and I reflected on that photo of the woman with the cross on her forehead. Starkly aware in the face of such horror and evil, we desperately needed this service. Needed to remember our frail human condition and our profound need for breath. Remember the painful journey Jesus endured to the cross, the reason he chose to suffer and die, and remember the promise of hope, the promise of new life and resurrection. One day there will be no more tears, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. No, a service like Ash Wednesday doesn't make the suffering and violence that broke out at Parkland, Florida, explainable or acceptable. Observing Ash Wednesday will not end the normalization of gun violence in the U.S. But I'm a pastor. I'm not a politician. I'm not a gun manufacturer or dealer. I do not understand the complexity of enacting and enforcing a ban on firearms and how these things might infringe on fundamental American rights to bear arms. I cannot legislate change. I can only bear witness that we are frail, we are broken, and invite each person who came forward last night to contemplate their mortality and move back into the world they live, a carrier of the seed of the subversive hope of the gospel. May the trees we plant bear leaves of healing for the nations. Even so, come, Lord Jesus.